I was invited here today to speak about what I witnessed in Gaza. What is left to say? What has been shared before me by my co-panelists here and has been said over and over again for the last year and a half is already so damning and both morally and legally sufficient to merit a response. In the words of my close friend, a surgeon in Gaza, when I asked her what I can share with the world, she said, "I don't know what one can say or write honestly. Last time I was asked this question, I felt like screaming in the face of the whole world and telling them, what are you waiting for? You've seen and heard it all." So nothing I can say today can fully encapsulate the catalog of atrocities that I witnessed last year in Gaza, that I witnessed this year in Gaza. Just in the last 10 days that I was in Gaza, this past time, so only 3 weeks ago, in addition to Israel's vicious break of the ceasefire agreement, killing or maiming 100 children every day, according to UNICEF, we had 76 dead bodies in our ER within 2 hours, or in the morgue of the hospital I was based at early morning on March 18th. In these last 10 days, of the time I was in Gaza, the Israeli military also shelled a UN team, killing and maiming members of it, bombed the ICRC offices, directly hit Nasser Hospital, where I was working, with a drone strike, killing 2 patients and injuring others. They completely leveled the only specialty cancer hospital in Gaza. They killed multiple Palestinian journalists, while international journalists are still not allowed in after a year and a half of these crimes, and executed at close range 15 rescue workers, as I'm sure most of you here know, who were desperately trying to rescue the wounded in Rafah, and then subsequently buried them in a mass grave, along with their ambulances and rescue vehicles. What red lines were not crossed in only those 10 days? I'm asking you, at this point, what is left to say? Each of these incidents on its own should have been enough, and if committed on another population, probably would have been enough. My question for you is, why wasn't it? Each one of the people I met in Gaza, each one of the children that I treated, has been on the receiving end of these crimes for a year and a half. Indiscriminate killing, maiming, unlawful detention and torture, forcible transfer, forced starvation, deprivation of education, deprivation of access to clean water and sanitation. What do I tell the patients I saw in Gaza who were the victims of these atrocities and European complicity in them? What do I tell Amina, a 5-year-old with severe burns who lay in the intensive care unit bed, staring at the wall without crying in pain or asking for anything? She, like so many children we treated in Gaza, have witnessed the most horrific crimes perpetrated against them continuously for a year and a half and with full impunity. What do we tell all the children of Gaza about why we let this happen, and for some, why they even enabled it? Or 7-month-old Aline, who was born into this genocide as her family struggled to protect her, only to be bombed, subsequently trapped under the rubble meters away from her home, extracted by a family member when he heard her crying. Aline's eyelashes and hair was singed. Her skin reeked of the weapons provided and funded by Western nations as she clung on to my clothes in the ICU. Aline's mother, father, Aline's mother, father, and 5-year-old sister were all killed. She's the sole survivor of her family, orphaned at the age of 7 months. What are we going to tell Aline if she survives this? I promised myself yet again that I wouldn't cry. I'm clearly not very good at this. Or 5-year-old Muhammad with a penetrating injury to his head, likely a gunshot, who died in the ER when there were no beds in the ICU. He had no surviving family to retrieve his body and was taken to the morgue by the medical team. Do we wash our hands of accountability because his entire family was exterminated, leaving no one to be accountable to? What do we tell 13-year-old Amir, who sustained severe neck trauma after his home was bombed and kept calling for his sister, who he didn't recognize was the girl in the bed next to him because she'd been burned beyond recognition? I tell Amir's story often because I thought about what I would do if I were in Amir's place that day in the ER before he knew that the rest of his family had died. A day later, when he learned this, he whispered to me, "I wish I died with them. Everyone I love is in heaven. I don't want to be here anymore." What do we tell Amir? What do we tell Zakaria's mother, who survived for months on cooked foraged leaves, refusing to eat her ration of bread, made with ground bird feed, so that her 4-year-old son, who was also malnourished, could eat it as Israel destroyed Gaza's agricultural land and blocked food aid at its border, starving an entire population? What do we tell Zakaria's mother? What do we tell my good friend, Mu'tasim, a young healthcare worker whose mother, sister, nephews, and nieces were all violently killed a year ago? And now, 15 months after the ICJ ruled plausible genocide, and Israel unilaterally broke the ceasefire, raining hell on Gaza starting March 18th, killed Mu'tasim's father and brother, paralyzed his only remaining sister. What do we tell him about why provisional measures meant to protect people like his family were just met with accelerated, indiscriminate killing? I asked a few of my colleagues in Gaza what they wanted me to share with the European Parliament today. These are some of their messages. We are in a killing field, not only because of the impact of bombing. We are really waiting in our spots in a killing line. This was an ICU doctor colleague of mine. An ER nurse told me, "Tell them, doctor, we don't have any path left except the path to death, the path of relief and escape from this lying, unjust world." Why is it that only the people of Gaza and Palestine are destined to resist this injustice alone and to resist the occupation that the entire world supports? Why is it that we are destined every day to lose a mother, a brother, a sister, and a friend? Why is it that I'm destined to die and even want death because I'm afraid of losing parts of my body or being disfigured by the bombing, or being lost, or being left trapped under the rubble, or even having them not find my dead body? Or even worse than all of that, to lose your family or even all of your loved ones in one day and then you're left alone. You can't imagine the bitterness of that loss. I don't want my voice to be heard. I don't want to bother them with talk of Gaza and its story. I just want anyone to speak out against this injustice, but not only with words, with their own hands and actions. An anesthetist said, "Did the people really see the charred bodies of children? I just don't understand." That was his only message to you. Pharmacist colleague said, "We are people, not just numbers. We're living in unimaginable suffering that worsens every day. I recently lost faith in anyone that claims to be taking action. We need real action, not just words. There is no accountability. All the international laws they claim to champion have been violating in Gaza, and nobody does anything." What do we tell these healthcare workers? The fate of each of the hospitals where they work across Gaza Strip should have been enough. They should have been the red line, and yet all 36 of the hospitals were not enough. Do you remember the Al-Nasser Paediatric Hospital where infant bodies laid connected to the ventilators as they decomposed in the ICU after the Israeli military forced the medical staff to evacuate, telling them that the patients in the ICU would be evacuated safely? I worked at Nasser Hospital and visited its remains just last month. That hospital where those babies' bodies were decomposing is flattened now by the Israeli military. Or its neighboring Rantisi Pediatric Subspecialty Hospital, where I also have worked before. Rantisi Hospital cared for Gaza's sickest children. It was forcibly evacuated and used as a base for the Israeli military, where they intentionally destroyed life-saving equipment. I saw machinery with the motherboards, medical equipment with the motherboards shot at, clearly intending that these life-saving equipment are never used again. Or Al-Shifa Hospital, a hospital many of you are probably familiar with, the center of Gaza's healthcare system that was attacked initially in November 2023 in the shadow of disinformation, causing international outcry. And yet, when attacked again in March 2024, destroying and burning it, it barely received any attention. The Israeli military destroyed all but the maternity building. All equipment and medical supplies were burned. We walked through its rubble when I was there last month, including 3 mass graves that we're told some 170 bodies were recovered from, some unidentified. We saw mounds of charred IV lines, dialysis equipment, patient beds, and wheelchairs hanging out of blown-out walls. Everything used to heal in a hospital whose name, Al-Shifa, means healing, was destroyed. I could go on and on about the Indonesian hospital, about Kamal Adwan Hospital, about Al-Emirati Hospital, Al-Auda Hospital, Al-Nasser Hospital, Al-Aqsa Hospital, Al-Ahli Baptist Hospital, bombed just 3 weeks ago. Al-Durra Paediatric Hospital, bombed just 4 days ago after the team tried to set up another intensive care unit there. There are no remaining pediatric intensive care units for the population in Gaza City and the north of Gaza. The organization I went to Gaza with, Medical Aid for Palestinians, helped set up a small ICU in a non-governmental hospital that didn't have an ICU before. There are 6 pediatric intensive care beds. There were no neonatal intensive care beds left for Gaza City in the north of Gaza when I was there. They set up 6 neonatal intensive care beds in that same small non-governmental hospital. So all 12 beds, PICU and NICU, have a total of 5 ventilators. 5 ventilators for over 1 million people. There are 30 ventilators sitting at the Gaza border, or in Israel, prohibited from entering Gaza. These are 30 ventilators, UNICEF ventilators, prohibited from entering Gaza. I was told just last night by one of my colleagues from UNICEF, who's currently in Gaza, that 24 newborns died in March alone because of this blockade of essential medical equipment. Unlike the first and second hospitals bombed in 2023, not even an attempted justification was required to ensure the impunity of attacks on most of Gaza's 36 hospitals. Impunity of attacks on over 140 ambulances that were destroyed in Gaza, and the over 1,400 doctors, nurses, paramedics, and other healthcare workers that have been killed in Gaza. The hundreds of healthcare workers that have been detained unlawfully and tortured in Israeli prisons. Killing healthcare workers, bombing and destroying hospitals and ambulances has become an internationally accepted and tolerated norm. What do we tell my colleagues about why we clap and bang pots applauding our healthcare workers heroically during the COVID pandemic? While we tolerate the intentional targeting and massacre of Palestinian healthcare workers who courageously continue to provide care for their patients in the midst of genocide. What will we tell future generations about what Europe was doing when we watched as 100 children were maimed or killed every single day? As we watched as their dismembered bodies were desperately streamed by courageous Palestinian journalists when international witnesses were barred. As we watched them burn alive, including the nephews and nieces of one of my colleagues and friends in Gaza. As we saw the most live-streamed genocide in modern history be met with silence, empty words, or worse, enabling. Western governments at most express deep concern without stopping to supply Israel with the technology, intelligence, and weapons to continue this war. Do we tell future generations that Western societies gave permission to exterminate the Palestinian people? I came here today with a very small and frankly naive hope that maybe something we share with you might move this Parliament to action. And if not, at the very least, I came here today to share what we witnessed in this building so that no one here can say that they didn't know, only that they knew and they didn't do anything. I know that by virtue of being here today, many of you are already convinced of the need to act. It's not too late for many, but it's not too late for the rest. So I urge you, I implore you, no more words, please act.